So there are millions of guitar lessons online. A lot of them are free and some are even good. You'd think by now that learning guitar would be easier than ever, but that's just not the case. In fact, it feels a lot harder. Every day you find something new that feels like it's the missing link in your playing. You might even practice it for a while diligently. But when you look back over the course of the last 6 months or even year, perhaps even longer, well, you don't feel like you made any substantial progress. Now, some of you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's because it's all information overload, and that's kind of true, but it's actually more insidious than that. Let me explain. The guitar suffers from something I can only describe as a kind of musical identity disorder. The true technical term would be dissociative identity disorder, which you may know by its former name, multiple personality disorder. I'm not a psychologist, but I am a doctor of music, and it's clear that the guitar has a serious identity issue that it projects onto us, which causes the confusion. Now, I'm not trying to make a joke here. I know that mental illness is a very serious thing. In fact, I knew someone with this exact disorder, and it was devastating. And that's honestly why I thought about this in relation to guitar, since I'm a guitar player, this is what I think about all day. But let me just quickly describe what it might feel like to you as the guitar player. You probably end up feeling overwhelmed and lost, which is super unmotivating, especially if guitar is your main hobby of artistic expression. Now, in psychology, when a therapist wants to understand someone's struggles, they often start with childhood, some history to help understand how things got so complicated. If we want to understand why the guitar feels so overwhelming today, I think we need to do the exact same thing. So let's take a brief look at the instrument's past, and then we'll come back, clarify the diagnosis, and figure out how to treat it and ourselves. Before YouTube, before online courses, before the idea you even had to pick a genre, by the way, that's a hint for later, but originally, the guitar wasn't a lead instrument. No one was talking about blazing solos or fretboard mastery. It was a rhythm tool. We're talking about the 1900s to around 1930. In the folk and blues tradition, the guitar was a storyteller's companion. You'd strum a chord, maybe play a few riffs, and you would sing along. It was about songs and simplicity. Similarly, in the early days of jazz, the guitar replaced the banjo. It was there to keep time, add a little bit of harmony, but most importantly, stay out of the way of the horns. Kind of ironic considering what the guitar has become today. If you need proof, just look at Freddie Green, the most iconic jazz guitarist of that era. It was often said, you couldn't hear Freddie, but you could feel him. So even in jazz, there was no dominant 7, flat 9, sharp 5, flat 13 in guitar chords, and there certainly wasn't sweep picking. But then something changed. The mid-1930s brought the first commercially viable electric guitars. And with that came a massive shift, not just in sound, but in what we feel as difficulty today. In the late 1930s into the 1940s, players like T-Bone Walker started to bring the guitar forward. Now the instrument was singing and screaming solos. It became soulful. Soon afterward, jazz added smooth sophistication with players like Charlie Christian and Wes Montgomery nailing the changes. Then, the 1950s and 1960s brought rock and roll. Rock pulled the phrasing and soulfulness from blues. It borrowed some harmonic color from jazz and, well, it played it on a solid body guitar through a cranked Marshall. And that became kind of the third piece of this bigger puzzle. Around the same time, however, pop also stepped in. It took this massively popular electric guitar sound, tamed it, and made it catchier and more accessible. In pop music, the guitar became a chameleon. Sometimes leading, sometimes just part of the texture, but always vital to mainstream music. In fact, even today, just about every touring pop artist still brings at least a guitarist or two with them. So what does that mean for us? Why go down this complicated history? Well, it means that guitar, unlike most instruments, didn't evolve inside just one genre. And that's why so many guitarists feel so overwhelmed. That's why you struggle to find a clear path forward to reach your goals. For example, if you happen to study bassoon and this was a bassoon YouTube channel, you'd probably play classical music. Here's some music, learn it, play with an orchestra or with a small group. If you study trumpet, you usually study jazz or classical music. Even nylon string guitar usually leads to classical, flamenco, or occasionally jazz. Those other instruments and most instruments evolve within a specific genre that gives a clear path forward. The key word here is clear, clarity. The guitar, by contrast, evolved by borrowing, mixing, and matching. And in so doing, it created an entirely new, complex, beautiful, and idiosyncratic identity, one that often defies genres and traditional labels. This is crucial for understanding how we should approach learning the guitar. I don't know if any of you are into this, but I kind of got this idea from professional fighting, especially mixed martial arts. So you have all different types of combat sports in general. You have submission grappling, wrestling, boxing, kickboxing. All of these separate disciplines are a form of combat. But if you want to fight mixed martial arts, MMA, and an organization like UFC, you have to study the art of blending. You need what they call a head coach. He's someone who balances and blends everything into a cohesive process so that you can actually link all these different combat sports together. In other words, the guitar you want to learn probably lives in the spaces between jazz, blues, rock, and pop. But somewhere along the way in music education, we started treating those different genres like they are walls, as if you had to only pick one and live inside of it and go super deep all the time. But again, that goes completely against what most guitar players are trying to do, the sound, the skills we're trying to cultivate. So I'll give you a real life example of how this can go wrong for the guitar student. You say you want to learn how to nail the changes. So someone says, well, you should learn jazz, go to a jazz player. So you go to an old school jazz guitar player, you say you want to work on nailing the changes, and he says something like you have to transcribe Charlie Parker and then take those solos through all 12 keys. That's really great advice if you want to become a straight ahead jazz player. But it's probably not great advice for the person who just wants to nail the changes. Here's another example. You want to get a little bit of that rock aggression and speed into your playing, don't we all? So you go, how do I get better at these different speed pentatonic licks? And some metal or rock guy says that you need to now work on your upward or downward slanting or economy picking or whatever. That is very useful if you want to become only a shred god. But it's not necessary if you just want to get a little bit faster in your solos. There's nothing wrong with specializing in just one genre of music. That's fantastic. I love all of those guys. But if you're still watching the video at this point, there's a good chance your goals have to do with a blended approach to the electric guitar. Of course, you can work with me on that by following the first link below and joining my community. It's the only program that was designed specifically for normal adults with busy schedules, families, all of that stuff, who maybe only have 15 or 30 minutes a day to play the guitar. We all know from experience that a lot of the guitar lessons out there today are just lazy. It's 101 licks. It's fancy playing and tab that they want you to learn. That's not how you actually get better, and you intuitively know that, which is why you don't follow it long term. With my program, you get a plan that's actually designed for you, hitting all of your goals, and you get a clear structure and a path forward. Most importantly, you get real feedback from myself and like-minded people when you get stuck or when you need some help. So if you finally want to reach your guitar goals, if you want to stop feeling overwhelmed and unsupported, definitely check out the first link below. Come join us right now. But of course, I won't just close this video without giving you some real actionable advice. So here are some tips you can use right this second. If you have a very specific guitar goal that's related to a particular genre of music, it's okay to just skim the surface of that genre and just steal 2 or 3 things you can use right away in your playing. So for example, if you want to work on nailing the changes, it's okay to just steal one concept from jazz, like some type of chromatic enclosure. You hear it, you see an example of it, just take that one idea, don't worry about everything else, and throw it in your rock solo, throw it in your blues solo. You're going to sound a bit more sophisticated. You don't have to go down every deep rabbit hole. If you're working on technique, maybe you want to get better at alternate picking. If you find that certain alternate picking licks don't work for you because you're not slanting the right way, who cares? Forget it. You don't need to learn how to play every single technique with your right hand. Maybe add in a hammer-on and a pull-off to make it easier. No one cares. No one's going to notice the difference, and you'll get the speed you're looking for. And the last thing I'll say is, Be okay with whatever unique, strange, idiosyncratic idea you have about how you want to approach the guitar. That's why the electric guitar exists. It exists for all of us people who have all of these strange goals we want to put together. So for example, if you decide that you want to take an old school pop song and play it with distortion on a metal amp because that sounds right in your brain, then do it. If you're like me and you're like, I want to work on fingerstyle playing, but I don't want to grow out my nails and I only want to use electric guitars, then do it. Again, the history of the electric guitar is one of being strange, idiosyncratic, and willing to embrace all types of weird styles and so on. Use that to your advantage and just get back to having fun with the instrument.